Thanks again for taking the time to chat. Do you want to both quickly introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Vico Sharabani. I'm the founder of The-Artery, visual effects supervisor, chief creative officer, wearing many hats.
Love it. And Yuval?
Yuval Levy, visual effects supervisor, creative director, and director sometimes as well.
Awesome. I figured just to start out, we're in 2023, but I know 2022 is a massive year for you guys. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on some of the big projects you guys have done, clients you've worked with, and yeah, just how much of a shift that was for The-Artery?
Yeah, definitely. 2022 was a remarkable year for us. We started right before that by shooting Smile, that became one of the best grossing films of 2022. And throughout the year, we've done all the visual effects. We can talk about it in more detail. A lot of projects from Armageddon Time to first time working with Disney on Hocus Pocus 2. We're working with MGM right now. Third project with Steven Soderbergh, with New Line, Warner Brothers.
Ari Aster.
Working with Ari Aster again. Yeah, there was so many that you see it's hard to even remember, but all films that are very meaningful for us, and relationships with directors and studios that are close to our hearts. So
yeah, that's really great. Yeah, Vico, you were on, I think it was episode 232, so almost 200 episodes ago. And yeah, it's just, I've always been paying attention to The-Artery and all the amazing projects you guys are doing. So yeah, it's been really inspiring just to see everything. And I feel like just to, I'll say get it out of the way, I figure we can talk about Smile. Obviously, that was a big project. It's extremely well received. It's also one that I think most people aren't really thinking of visual effects, kind of like Top Gun and a lot of other films that come up where everyone's just very engrossed in the film and they're not really thinking about behind the scenes, like how things were put together. Do you want to talk a little bit about that project? Like, how did you first get involved in it?
The summer of 2021, we were approached by the producers telling us about this new director that got picked up in South by. We looked at Parker's work, we met him, and we were like, definitely, we want him. It felt like a special filmmaker from the get-go. We started working together, and at some point, just working, having the conversations with Parker, I felt like Yuval will be a good fit for him. So actually, I surprised Parker in the tech scout by bringing Yuval. And they hit it off so well that I knew that it's going to work well. And from there, everything evolved to, it became something that Parker wanted to shoot everything in camera, obviously. And we always support that. But you know that there are always gaps that we need to bridge to say it lightly, in order to achieve the results that are on screen.
It was a ride that we didn't expect. It was a small production. Vico called me, said, "Listen, look at this." I looked at some storyboard. I was like, "Wow, this is really cool." But who's the director? He's like, "This guy, Parker Finn." I'm like, "What did he do?" He's like, "First-time director, young." There's nothing really that we could see that could show us that he's going to be able to pull it off. So I think it felt at the beginning like we will have to support him a lot. Mm-hmm. In many ways. Sometimes I think in this one is also as a creative partner, not just somebody who's just putting the green screen or whatever. It's also trying to think about the shot as a whole and how it relates to the movie and what kind of effect we're trying to make in order to to help the story. What's feasible, what's maybe impossible, what we should try, how many takes we should cover on different things, how much we can extend those prosthetic, and sometimes just imagining a shot in a much bigger way, in a much more profound way with him. So, I mean, when I saw him, I felt that there was an opportunity here to do something bigger than what we used to do, or something that, at the back end, you just somebody remember that they need to do something. That was a big one, and it was a great opportunity. So I stepped right into it, and from the conversation, we're able to pitch ideas and get feedback, and we're really just brainstorming everything before we went on set. And then when it did started, it was just like, you know, playing around with a lot of different things. There was this, what Vico was saying, it was very important for Parker to achieve everything on camera, but very quickly you understand that there's, you know, what you can achieve and is pretty good. It's okay, but it does missing tons of parts to really go beyond and create that impact that he wanted. And I think the impact that he wanted had to be grounded in reality. It had to feel like we've never touched this, you know, the movie, like it's untouched. But we were doing already on the shoot. I realized, you know, for instance, there is the stabbing shot, which she was stabbing the patient, and I saw her hand, you know, not really working the way you would stab, much faster, sort of like going in the same direction. The performance was great, but not exactly in the timing. So I felt like there's going to be a lot of like small editing of movements, slowing down, you know, matching different pieces. So even a shot that's supposedly simple, usually what you see in the movie is like one stab and it's hidden and it has a lot of blood coming in, sort of like on a horror movie, obscuring everything. And here, as we were starting to develop that shot, it became like a very dry stab. So you could actually see, slowly see everything in camera in front of you. And it's like 20 times that she does it. And how would the motion would feel, you know, when you pull back. We had to investigate all of those things. And basically, we ended up recreating all of her arm and the whole movement. That's just one example. So it was like, when we went into post, we really discovered that, you know, we covered a lot, but to get those nuances was, you know, month of work, really developing it.
There's like very heavy things. If you think about it, there's like 3D doubles, being burnt,
really everything in the book.
Replacements, face tears, blood, fire, liquid, drones, everything.
Yeah, I think at one time I was thinking, like, there's everything in the book. There's every simulation from liquid fire, you know, skin tearing, cloth, whatever simulation you want, we did. I think with the most challenging thing, because of that incredible photorealistic or naturalistic, you know, view, it's not even hyper-real. It has to be real, you know, grounded. So because many times we had to stitch between real effects to our CG effect, there had to be seamless stitch to extend. It has to be, so you have a drop of blood, it might start off as an effects drop, but we will extend it in art directed so it will fall exactly where we want to and maybe develop into something else. I think that makes it even more complicated because you're not, I mean, I don't want to give out other references, but sometimes in other bigger movies, you sort of go into suspension of belief. Everything is CG, everything is invented, everything is hyper real, and you lose connection to what's real and what's not. I think there's a leeway there to create new visual language. Here, there's no escaping it. It had to look the part. And like Vico was saying, we were shot that we extended from drone into buildings. We had to recreate the whole environment in order to get those perfect camera moves. Simulation, obviously there's the fire scene, which was incredibly complicated, which is our character sort of like disintegrate, and you know, while she's doing a very, very intense movement, going through pain and sort of like melting. and there was sort of like a shot that we developed together with Parker, you know, how far we can stretch it, how much pain we want to see. Is it one shot and she's just going on fire, which was sort of like where we start, just one thing, or we go back to that and we see the evolution of, like, you know, what was a person becoming a melting monster, you know, that as, you know, approaching the audience.
You don't want that to feel like the like an end of movie visual effects sequence where it's like, here's where the budget went. Yeah, I'll quickly jump in to say that there's a show I'm supervising right now where I had an artist coming on who just came off of a different superhero show that we're doing, and that was something that I thought was really important to explain, is that with the other show, it's kind of like add 10+% to the shots. In other words, you get someone punching through a wall, it's like, okay, let's add the camera shake, let's really hit those beats and make you feel it. And whereas like this other show, it's like a lot of gore, but it's meant to be very photoreal and subtle, so it's more about, it's 10% less, you know, it's more about, rather than going over the top, you want to bring it back. And for you, like, how did you both kind of come to the conclusion, especially with the director, in terms of what is too much versus what is not enough?
Parker is a very, very specific and very detailed director. It's not like something that he came in totally unknown. He had a very clear vision, right? So when Yuval say we supported him, it's not supporting him in order to get the vision, but it's like developing and fine-tuning it, yeah? He had a very strong feeling about certain things, and, you know, certain places actually made us work harder because he was very specific about that type of the dryness that Yuval is talking about and stuff like that. Very early on, there was a feeling of mutual respect and understanding of that we here to support his vision, and we will back him up in order to achieve that, no matter what. And we pushed very hard. It's actually very hard. Yeah. It's one of those shows that can easily be a B movie just because of the visual effects, right? Because they take you away from the reality that the director is building. So it was important for us to push that, and it was like a weekly call with Parker, and always like trying to finesse things, pitching things to him that maybe he didn't think of, you know, especially places like the melting skin and little detail that Yuval, I remember, pitched. It's like everybody were on the same page. It wasn't like visual effects guys that are pushing for visual effects and director that trying to calm them down.
Yeah, I mean, Vic was right. It was Parker had a vision, right? He had the story and knew exactly what, but just nuance. Like I remember Vico when we were on that tech scout was like, you know, maybe we can break the roof at the end when the house is burning. Maybe we can also sort of like collapse the roof on the monster when it's inside. And Parker was like, yeah, you can do that. Cool. And those are the things that we kind of make our work harder, but we know that we contribute to the movie, and that makes us feel more creatively invested. So we have somebody, so it's not like we are changing the vision, we're just enhancing the vision, pushing it forward, making it more impactful. And I think in this movie, it was not about the gore. It was not about the blood spraying all everywhere. It was more about impact. It's really like, what really scares you is like the stuff you've never, really, they go that far. Oh, no, you know, not only she's burning and you see it, she's also melting, like her, she leaves her skin behind. It's like, it's not gore. It's like the concept is just evolving it, going really deep with things that could evolve in. I mean, the whole movie is about, it's evolving really bad. You know, it's like a snowball that just doesn't stop. And I think that's the feeling we wanted to give the effects as well. It's like, you can't stop that. Like, you never know how far we will go. Even like the opening shot when we go into Saucy's Bacon's eye, you know, we're just going in there and we wanted to show everything. And it, you know, it's not a pleasant thing to see the eye, you know, it's not beautiful. It's sort of like daunting. So, you know, that we could have done it just like a 2D push or some blur or some defocusing, or just go into, like we've seen it a million times before. But, you know, we're thinking, no, we should see a little world inside, you know, like we want to follow. And then we talked about it, like this is the, you know, the entity drives, you know, that's the trauma, sort of like she received the trauma. There was, you know, that concept that we're trying to convey at the very beginning. You take the viewer through her eye, but you want to see the entering moment. So that became a thing, you know, it's like, and I think that kind of approach was on every shot. Every little thing we did was very important to develop that style. And I think when you watch the movie, you feel that it's not a gore, it's not a horror movie like a gore. Every effects was designed. I think one of the issues with that is so embedded. I think we succeeded so well that it's almost invisible. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody sees the monster at the end. It's very visually stunning. It was actually was made. It's a real prosthetic. You know, the guys who did the alien, they were unbelievable. But throughout that, the fire and everything is sort of like you're accepting it, and maybe something that happened on stage, practical effects, like the guy ripping his face off. Was a shot that some people think, maybe there's a way to do it with prosthetic. Maybe I'll put somebody else's face on me, and I just.
It's like, see, that's a real movie. We didn't need any of that CGI BS.
We love that. Yeah, we love that. Yeah. But it's for the category, we got quite a few comments in that realm. So these are the best compliments that we can get. But yeah, the conversation with Parker was very cinematic, psychological. The technical part we kind of almost shielded from him at times, right? Because we did a lot of 3D scans, we did a lot of simulations. That these things are technically heavy, but with Parker we try to keep the conversation in the what is the cinematic and psychological impact that you're trying to convey, and then make sure that it doesn't fall into, I identify something on the screen that is tweaked.
It's hard to explain how complex something is. Like, for instance, that we had a drone that was doing a certain move and going into close to the wind, and then we stitched to another shot, and it's something that we planned for, and it was okay. But Parker felt that he wanted an even different move. Like it's sort of like following up that ambulance on the road, and then just tilt and perfectly entering the window while it tilts in movement. And I'm like, in order to do that, we have to recreate the whole building, the whole scenery, the ambulance, the whole thing. We have to do a bunch of projections, and he's like, listen, I don't know what it means, but if you can do it, that would be great. So I'm like, okay, and previous that, and I felt, it does contribute to the flow of the movie, like that sense of like that perfect God camera, So we went and did that, but it was a huge effort, It's sort of like throwing everything you planned out the door.
I think that's a great thing, though, when you work with someone who is willing to fight for something that they want versus not really knowing what they want and kind of just saying, give me a bunch of options, So if they're willing to do that, then it means that like this is worth it because they're 100% invested themselves. I guess like one question around that would be, you kind of mentioned before about initially meeting with him and wanting to do the film. Like, I'm always fascinated by the topic around picking your clients, because I think that early on everyone is shopping themselves around trying to say, will anyone pick us? But obviously you're going to get to a point where bandwidth and your attention to where it can be invested is more precious. So for you, what do you typically look for when you are looking at who you want to work with? Obviously you're not saying anybody, you're wanting to pick the ones that you want to get behind and their vision and spend the next 6 months, 12 months with them on executing that.
I'm just going to say that for some reason, Vico's got a really good eye for people, which is an amazing quality. And I actually asked him when we started on that tech scout that he mentioned, that famous tech scout, I was like, Vico, who is this director? Like, do you think? And Vico said, I have a good feeling about him. Like, I think this guy is gonna do something great. I was like, okay. So I think it's, I don't know, Vico, you can talk more about that. But for this one, I'll give like full credit on I think he actually he had a good feeling that this is going to be, I don't think anyone thought that it's going to go, we were planning to do a streaming, right? It was supposed to go streaming. I don't think anyone thought, especially back then, COVID times, that it's going to go cinematic and be like, a bestseller like that. But, number one in the box office, like nobody would ever imagine that. But the sense that Vico had about Parker was something. I think it's how can you explain that, Vico? Where does it come from?
Allan mentioned the demanding type of directors that know what they want, and many times people are afraid of them. For us, we love those directors. So we worked on two films with no Baumbach, and like multiple projects with Steven Soderbergh and with Wes Anderson on two
Ari
films.
Aster.
and Ari Aster and Cary Fukunaga, and so for us, it's like those demanding clients are what attracts us. We see passion, we see clarity, we see vision. We want to contribute to these type of people, and the conversation that we have with them is an overall conversation. It's never about executing the shot. So I don't know, maybe that's why we develop those type of relationships, because it's like a creative, production, technical, budget, schedule, all of those things are being taken in consideration on the highest level. So we can't geek out on the psychological aspects of the film and bring something into the execution. And I believe that for those directors, it's important because they're not there to look at edges of a green screen. That's not the conversation, right? The conversation is like, what are we trying to achieve and how can we take it even further?
I was curious too, because you both were co-supervisors on the show. What was that like? Because I'm always fascinated by that, in the sense that I think it's very easy to interpret that as, well, two people, you're going to tread on each other's toes and have conflicting ideas. But I feel like if anything, it's an accelerant. You've got a partnership with someone that, whether it is there's certain areas that one person maybe accelerates more or stronger in than the other, it's like you complement each other. And if anything, it's a chance to get excited with somebody else, rather than having that inner voice kind of seeding doubt in your mind. Instead, it's this loud outer voice telling you like, yeah, let's do it, let's do more. So like, what was that whole experience like? And also, how did you guys, obviously you've worked together for a very long time, but how did you kind of figure out where and how to play together? Like, who would lean into one thing or another? You know, how did the whole relationship work?
It's definitely a 20-year relationship, or
yeah, we know each other for a long time.
It's like, you know, a part of it, people tell me maybe because you're the owner of the company, then you do what's right for the project, and you don't have that ego of like, I'm going to be the supervisor right now, and it's important to hear what I say. But also, you know, we retreat outside from the conversation, and we have our own conversations, and we see what's right for the project.
I think also Vico, he's the owner of the company. So yeah, I mean, he has many other projects. So he's like looking at the big workload. And I think he was really a lot more like an executive supervisor on that. So, you know, it's there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving pieces. So, you know, I was on set every day, you know, talking to Parker, doing like the legwork, but I think Vico had a bigger perspective, dealing with the, you know, we're dealing with a studio, we're dealing with many specs that were changing. So I think for me, it was more the legwork, working with the artists, with the, you know, CG to comp and getting all that stuff more closer with Parker, and Vico was more seeing it on a bigger scale. And also the very beginning of the project, just setting it up, was all something that Vico started, and sort of like I came in once we started Tech Scout, but I think more in the trenches a little bit, but it was good to know that you have, you know, somebody to talk to when we did, and we had a lot of, you know, moments where like, okay, how do we proceed here, how do things are changing, you know, this is becoming bigger, we need different people. That's where it's good that we have that, you know, that we know each other, and also Vico owns the company, so I can pull more resources or have a conversation on how to go about things. That was amazing. And to me it's amazing that the owner of a company is a visual effects guy, you know, that really understands, because I've seen also people from different backgrounds.
Absolutely.
You know, but also understand production so well. That's amazing. That's a true power of The-Artery. You know, that it's people who know, who coming from the industry. They're not from the outside, or not from more production or different. It's really like you know, talking to somebody who does it all the time is different.
Like, in your mind, like, was there any specific sequence or shot that stood out, kind of like, how are we going to pull this off? Or just kind of stayed in your mind as being the most memorable, fun, challenging one to tackle?
There were a few, like each one of them had like a different impact. As you've mentioned before, the end sequence with a fire is definitely the most complex because we're taking over with CG doubles that are being burned and melting and interacting with the environment, and so the fire grows further and stuff like that. So I would say that's extremely memorable, but there were quite iconic moments there. The neck break that is it was a great success in the teaser. So when we went to the cinema and we bought tickets just to watch it with the crowd, you hear the people anticipating that because they know what's going to happen. And I think it's a very iconic moment. I think the iconic moment of Monster Mom ripping her face off is also very iconic. The stabbing, so many stabs in camera while the camera is moving, in a hospital lighting. I haven't seen these type of moments, and I think they're extremely impactful. So
hard to tell. I agree. I mean, it's so hard to tell. I mean, it's like Vico was saying. Like, I don't know when we were working and we're seeing it on the screen, like the face ripping, which happens here. Like, it's in front of you. Like, it doesn't happen there. It's not a medium. It's like a close. Like, you see everything. You see it's insane. It's just it's very bold. It's very bold. There's very bold shots, and like Vico said, they were iconic. And I saw them like, oh, I can't believe we're doing this. But it's gonna go streaming. Thinking nobody's gonna see it. I'm gonna have to tell people to see it because And I was thinking to myself, like, that moment, cinematic. Like, people sitting in a theater and seeing like a huge screen. That moment could be unbelievable. Like, I wish we could see it, and it happened. And we got, like Vic was saying, we got to buy tickets, like, sit among regular, guys on, they didn't know what to expect. And I just looked around and seeing the impact of those shots was very rewarding. I mean, they were scared, of course, but it was it felt like it was doing what we anticipated. So it's hard to tell all of those moments where we're taking it further. When we created imagery that's just it's daunting, and it's like maybe it's not the kind of imagery that everybody wants to create. I mean, if you look at my Google searches and the references I had to look in order to create some of those things, I'm sure I'm in some kind of like FBI shortlist. It's like we had to look up some crazy stuff. Like, the whole movie, I see it as a one whole thing, and we were constantly looking at the balance of when we felt like one moment becomes stronger and better and more finessed and more impactful, we kind of went back and said, oh, now I got to make this one sort of like the same language. So it was more looking at it globally. It's hard to say which one is my favorite. And I saw that Vico's team just started mentioning everything.
We talk about us, but there was a really good team on this. Everybody from Dave Stewart to Joe Grunfast, Arif Aturala, John Bodine, Thurman, so many people here at the office that contributed to that. As supervisors, we always get the glory, but it was a very nice a team effort also in the studio.
Yeah, it was also worth saying that it was a small team. So everyone out of those people in the credit, which is not a big list, pushed through many shots, came up with a lot of solution, thinking out of the box and working, tirelessly, figuring out stuff. So it's like really all of those names are, they were each and every one pulled off an amazing work. So it was an incredible team, incredible, beyond belief. But yeah, but also beyond that, I think, the supporting production team was also great, sort of supporting us through that. And I think also worth saying that, yeah, we did tons of effects, and those shots were like, some of them, like for instance, the dead cat, we couldn't even use the dead cat that was shot on set. We had to recreate it completely, Mustache the cat that came out of the box. That was like all CG. But it was some amazing FX people here on that show as well, and it's like worth mentioning that they did some great. They gave us a really good base.
That's really cool. I was curious too, like whether there's a specific shot you want to point out, but like what's the typical process from start to finish? Let's say hypothetically, whether you want to talk about this one or a different one, but the face pulling shot, something like that. Are you doing any initial look dev tests just to say like, okay, cool, I think we got the process before you go vertical on it?
It's a good example because this is one shot that we planned, and then Parker wanted a different take. Now you get a different take, then you know how it is. You didn't shoot exactly what you're expecting to stitch together.
It was supposed to be a static shot, so it's supposed to be like, sort of like you cut into him and he's doing the ripping of the face, cutting back to her reaction, cutting back to him. And I think on edit, right?
There's like an
amazing editor. He really liked the movement into frame. So it's like he's moving into frame, and then he does that. But that threw us, all of our plan was out the window. It's like, oh, wait. So now we gotta sort of like doing it within that movement.
Yeah, it was Frankensteining hands from this take, face from that take, prosthetic from another take, CG ripping strings.
Yeah.
It was like,
that definitely threw a lot of the planning. I mean, we had multiple takes of a certain angle, and now we had a different angle. We had to fit all of those pieces to a different action. But it was like that thing, like what's better for the movie?
Exactly.
Definitely have that ripping happening within action, within establishing movement into it. Was much more impactful. So it's like, okay, you gotta figure it out. But now, yes, we had pieces. Were they exact? Not anymore. So, sometimes you can plan, but you have to be flexible. I think flexibility is also a key in good supervision. Rolling with the punches. I've been hearing a lot of podcasts like that, and read a lot of books and articles. And I remember there was a time when all the supervisors would say, yeah, we planned that and we shot that and we had all the textures planned and we came in and it all worked beautifully and we came out with amazing results. And I was like, wow, man, I'm experiencing something a little bit different all the time. And I think the truth is, as much as you can plan, as much as you can be precision, you still have to have flexibility and kind of like roll with creative that's evolving many times,
That's always kind of been my ongoing joke with like going back into the 90s, where you would work on a commercial and someone is like, oh, that turned out amazing, like you did such a great job, like 3D looks great. And it's like, no, like you should have seen the 3D before it went through Flame. It's I'm always amazed that, especially most Flame and Inferno ops, like you're kind of used to getting a pile of crap, and being able to then turn it into a masterpiece. So when you actually have a talented team and careful planning, even if it doesn't go to plan, it still means that you kind of set up the win, and then whatever you do on top of that is just going to be amplifying everything that's already done. So yeah, I mean, it all looked really amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely we combined that when you say going back to the 90s, we like to have that ability of thinking and solving things in tandem to our precise planning and execution. Because and we see that with a different generation of artists, right? Certain artists can dive deeper to those abilities of like, how can we solve this when it's doesn't seem to be possible, right? Like all of a sudden you get everything is changing. It's just not possible to put it together if you look at it in the way that things come in these days. Perfect from CG, the right motion control or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So in every show, there is something like this that is like unplanned, needs to be solved, needs to think outside the box, not with the traditional pipeline. And that experience of looking back a couple of decades is actually very helpful.
And I think you appreciate that too. Like if you're doing a massive sequence of dialogue taking place in a car on a green screen, you know, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's just like the whole recipe is there. You're just following it. It kind of takes the fun out of it. But when you do get a project that is exciting, but also it's like, how are we going to pull this one off? Like that's when you get to really play and think, well, what if we did this and then that and then that? And at least for me, I feel like that's most of what we do. It's problem solving and trying to execute on the vision creatively, but trying to figure out the technical skills behind the scenes to actually pull that off.
100%. We call it flipping burgers with beautiful pixels. Like when you get too big that it's only execution and you're doing one little piece in your thing and there's no like creative thinking behind it, that's where it's not really creative. It's becoming very technical. So we definitely try to avoid that. So which kind of communicates with your previous question about how do you choose your projects and stuff like that. Everything we do is meaningful for us on one level or another. You know, it's not just like let's get another project in, but we got lucky that we get to choose good ones. So for a medium-sized company to have the portfolio of projects that we have is I think that gives a sense of how we choose them.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to have fun, you know. What we chose to do that, you know, because we love it. And many times you go into like, why am I doing this, you know? But it's like always trying to push and up your game and find those interesting moments. Everything could be interesting. Everything, you can take everything to the next step, you know. And I think, yes, there are those boring shots like the driving comps, whatever, you know, like replacing a picture. I mean, replacing a screen, yes, but if you see, but within those, when you get to those moments, when you get to a project like Smile, which you can actually play all the way, you know, just that's when you have that room, just go, like, don't stop, because that's how you fulfill sort of like your, you know, your ambition to create something that's different and to, you know, to make a statement, I think. And that's worth to reminding ourselves all the time. And then suddenly it becomes like part of the culture of a company. You know what I mean? If you do it all the time, if you actually exercise, it's hard to exercise. It's much easier to say it, you know, especially, you know, like stuff like commercials and, you know, we got to sell a product. That's even harder. When you sell a story, it's always easier, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sell a product is a little bit harder, but we have to keep reminding ourselves that, you know, that's the mission.
In terms of, like, obviously there's been so much innovation, whether it's with cameras or computer VFX technology, AI. I'm curious if there's any specific technology or innovations that you've seen recently or stuff that's coming down the pipe at the moment that you've got your eye on.
Everything is interesting, right? Like Midjourney, you already do concept design. Why not? Like the ChatGPT, we've seen it already, like used here for in different ways. We just came back from NAMT Studios where we shot 3 days cars on the XR stage. We are training a brain of Cynthia. We talked about Cynthia last time, I believe. It's our TikTok influencer side project. We developed a brain that answers with a character, not just giving you information like Siri and Alexa. So we're constantly playing with any piece of technology that is out there. Sometimes it gets to our projects, sometimes it influences our thinking, sometimes it's something that we discard. But we constantly interested in the different technologies that are out there and how to use them. Not only doing creative work, but doing the work in a creative way. That's a part of our DNA.
It's funny, like you play with something and you're like, I don't know. It's nice to get into that technology because it's interesting. And then the next project you have, it comes handy. You know, it's like, wow, I can use that for that, you know, and it's all of those things that are 1 year, it's like out there, you know, like the Mandalorian or whatever, you know, the LED, XR stage, you know, very quickly becomes something that everybody does all the time. It's like it used to be that you would see something that the big boys doing, whatever, you know, will take 10 years until you actually see that stuff, that technology, you know, like AI or whatever. It's been picking up in a month or two. You know, we've been seeing things that we couldn't believe are done, and then the next month we actually playing with it, and maybe a week after we're getting into our projects. You know, we want to make a storyboard. Why not have like AI? Just, you know, see different ideas. You want to explore designs. We've been using it. So it's amazing how quickly you got to pick up on those things because they become part of your day to day. And I think technology is, you know, expanding our horizons and also helping us create things that have never been seen before, which is super difficult. Because like we're so saturated with visual content that we, you know, technology is maybe the only way that really helps us. Either going forward, it ties in what we talked about. It's either going forward and trying to use technology to show things that you've never seen, or actually going backwards to something like the 90s, you know, that kind of like smart, or 80s or 60s or whatever, that kind of like old horror. And expanding on it in a very subtle way that's invisible, with also with technology. I mean, that will allow us to do it in such a seamless way that you wouldn't notice it. You'll think that it's like a classic movie that was done all, you know, effects, but it's actually the technology, the deep, you know, knowledge of like the best tools that are out there that we know of, you know, to create something that's so seamless.
And I guess just to wrap things up, what's next for you guys? Like, from what you can publicly talk about at the moment, any big things coming down the pipe, or how's 2023 playing out so far?
So it started very strong. We did say we're working with MGM right now. We worked on the XR stage, so that's going to be like a full campaign for cars that Yuval directed the shoot also. It started pretty strong. We got 4 film projects and this campaign that's quite solid.
Well, excellent. It's a good problem to have.
Yes.
A lot of stuff happening, and of course, like we're bidding constantly, and it, you know, it's like choosing our next projects is something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let Vico you'll decide, Vico. You know,
he's the client whisperer.
He'll tell us. Yeah, he gets the vibe.
That's really great. Well, again, I'm really grateful for your time, guys, and this has been amazing. I'll make sure to link to everything in the show notes. But again, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, Allan.